Now for global business updates, Rotus Oddiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Dr. Abasi. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning to all our viewers. We kick off with oil actually falling over the last 24 hours, picking up a bit this morning on the rumors of peace talks. There's been a lot of talk now that we will get an announcement from President Biden and Emmanuel Macron on a truce deal between Hezbollah and Israel. It's supposed to be announced tomorrow, according to what the rumors suggest. And so that's why we've seen oil falling. So you've seen West Texas Intermediate now below 70, well, actually, yeah, below $70, $69.19. Brent crude at 73.30, falling from 75 levels. Let's go to Asian stocks. And again, Donald Trump giving us a lot of content here. You saw mixed performance on the Asian markets after Trump announced that there's going to be more tariffs. So we'll get to that. But, you know, China, I guess they've already priced these tariffs in. Shanghai Composite Index in mainland China, that was up about 14 basis points. Your Hang Seng in Hong Kong also up about 9 basis points. The Nikkei 225, which I've said this over and over, this is an export-oriented index. So, you know, a number of companies there that are focused on exports, we saw them falling. And so the Nikkei 225 in Japan was dragged down. The Kospi in Korea also falling as well. Remember, Samsung is, of course, a Korean company, exports a lot of electronics. So Samsung and a number of other companies that are export-oriented also on the Korean index falling as well. There's a new moniker called the Besant bump, as opposed to the Trump trade. Yesterday, U.S. markets, particularly the Dow, hitting a new high on Monday. And as a result of them, you know, really liking Trump's pick of Mr. Besant, feeling like he's going to be, quote-unquote, the adult in the room since he's worked with both Democrats and Republicans. So you see the Dow Jones there, 44,007 is a new high again for the Dow, up by 99 basis points, almost a full percentage points. S&P 500, that also, the new level there is 6,000 points. So it actually touched that, but then came back down to 5,009. The NASDAQ also up as well. So let's get to Trump in a Truth Social post yesterday or early hours of this morning, saying that he's going to apply a 25% tariff on Mexican and Canadian goods coming into the country. He also says an additional 10% on China. This is separate from the up to 60% that he's threatened. And get this, he says it's because of drugs that are coming into the country through the borders. The Mexican Canadian dollar fell to almost a 4-year low. The Mexican peso fell. The Chinese yuan, all these currencies are being impacted. If we take a look at a quote from the Truth Social post of the President-elect, he says, as everyone is aware, thousands of people are pouring through Mexico and Canada, bringing crime and drugs at levels never seen before. This tariff will remain in effect until at such time drugs, in particular fentanyl, and all illegal aliens stop this invasion of our country. It's quite remarkable to put tariffs on legal goods coming in as a punishment for illegal immigration and drugs. I heard Rufai talking earlier, I think you were talking about another story where Rufai was saying, parents, keep your children safe. Just to use the parent analogy, if you live in a neighborhood and you're a parent and your gate is your border, your fence is your border, you are in charge of keeping your kids safe, and there's drugs in your neighborhood, whose responsibility is it to make sure that your children don't fall prey to drugs, right? It's you. So there's drug enforcement agencies and the like. And actually, the reason why I bring that up is because Liu Pengju, who is a spokesperson for the Chinese embassy to the U.S., here's a tweet. He put this tweet out in the week following Trump's post. He says, China-U.S. economic and trade cooperation is mutually beneficial in nature. No one will win with a trade war. So that is a hint as to what could happen, that China could again retaliate like they did in 2017. And you know what will happen to prices. He continues saying that the counter-narcotics authorities of China and the U.S. have resumed regular communication since the San Francisco summit. The Chinese side has notified the U.S. side of the progress made in U.S.-related law enforcement operations against narcotics or hard drugs. China has responded to the U.S. request for verifying clues on certain cases and taking action. All these prove that the idea of China knowingly allowing fentanyl to flow into the U.S. runs completely counter to facts and reality. And speaking of facts and reality, we had said let's look up some numbers from the CDC, the Center for Drug Curbing in the United States. They actually said drug overdose deaths in the U.S. If you look at the data from 12 months through June 2023, 108,000 to 2024, falling to 97,000. So it's actually down 10%. It's still high, but the CDC has been doing what it can to try to bring that number down. To Nigeria's GDP, not really much I can add. You all have talked quite a bit about the GDP figures, but Rufai, my brother, you can't use dollar terms, when it suits an argument, right? To say that, okay, Nigeria's GDP of 3.46% year on year, you're using nominal and real GDP, okay, in dollar terms is really low. Then on the flip side, when we now look at the budget for 2025, which is 47.9 trillion, folks are saying, oh no, it's too high, you're spending so much. But nobody says the quiet part out loud, which is that in dollar terms, Nigeria's 2025 budget is actually lower than, I think it's like a 4-year low. If you compare it to the 800 naira to the dollar budget of 2024, or even going to 2023. So you're looking at 27.9 trillion, I think in US dollars for 2025 versus about 34 to 35 trillion. Also the debts in dollar terms, the reason why our debt is higher is because your foreign debt in US dollars priced at the present exchange rate makes it higher than debt in the prior year. So we have to stay consistent when we want to use dollar terms. But very quickly, just to round off, the mining sector, and I'll give Rufai credit here. Rufai has hammered on and on and on about the mining sector. While President Tinubu is well within his rights to praise and be happy about these GDP numbers, we are still saying that we can do better. And the mining sector did only 3%. We had a guest on the Global Business Report, Basil Abia. He is a policy analyst and the co-founder of Verif Africa. Listen to what he said about the mining sector.
We also need to be able to get mining up. Like I said, the analysis of the GDP report by the MBS that just came out today is still hovering around 3%. We should be doing 7 to 10% for mining and quarrying. We can do that once we get the majors in. But how do you get the majors in? The fiscal incentives have to be set right. Security has to be set in stone. So there's a lot of governance from policy to security governance, and we're not seeing a lot of that. Kudos to the Ministry of Mining, especially Kayode Fayeme's time. They did a lot of heavy lifting when it came to policy frameworking, and we're seeing the benefits of policy frameworking, because whether we like it or not, the mining sector is at the highest activity rates. Anybody who has spoken with anybody in mining, they'll tell you just that. The problem is the insecurity and the lack of structure. It's affecting the majors from seeing the mining space as attractive.
So look, we're not picking on the minister here. This is just something that is well known. Nigeria's mining sector should be boosted. So these GDP numbers, they are okay, but could be better. Finally, today is D-Day for MPC. A lot of economists, actually, for what Rufai said yesterday, 50 basis point hike.
Rotus, my brother, you're my very good brother, but we disagree on a lot of things because I like to say things the way they are. If you listen to my analysis here, I made mention of the fact that in dollar terms, that budget is even small compared to our budget about 10 years ago. I think about close to 10 years ago, we had a $30 billion budget, but in dollar terms, this is about $28 billion. And I talked about it, and I don't cherry pick like you claim. I speak the facts. See, this is what I'm saying as regards the 3.4% growth. I'm telling you that when you look at the debts that we have taken in Naira terms, and the debt level from 87 trillion to about 134 trillion, if you take the differential of about 47 trillion, subtract that from the nominal GDP of 71 trillion, you will see that we have a big debt overhang, which is affecting the economy. My grouse with the budget is that we are going to be incurring more deficits. We don't have the deficit, the power to be able to fund our deficit in the first place, and we are not seeing what the money is being used to do. That's my problem with the budget. Look at it, for instance. Budget estimated that 2 trillion was expended on budget padding in the last budget cycle. And somebody will have thought that we will have had more fiscal discipline with our budgeting system. Rotus, I'll challenge you. Just go and look at budget website and see the frivolous line items of project being added to the budget. That's just my grouse. I want a $40 billion budget, a bigger budget size. But we don't have the money at this point in time, and we can't keep incurring deficit for monies that will be stolen. That's just my grouse. So I'm not playing the pick and choose of Naira and dollar. I know that the budget is smaller in dollar terms and all of that, but I'm also telling you about the debt in Naira terms. The second point, Rotus, there's a Premium Time article that shows how illegal mining goes on in Bani, in Kwara States. How the police and other governmental agencies are involved in that illegal mining. In fact, they give the Oyo State government, there's somebody that said he collects on behalf, allegedly, on behalf of the Oyo State government as regards monies from illegal mining. You are going to see all of that in the Premium Times article. I'll probably forward the article to you.
All right, to President-elect Donald Trump, former president and now President-elect Donald Trump, saying that on day one he's going to sign an executive order imposing 25% tariff on goods coming in from Mexico and Canada, neighbors, and an additional 10% on goods from China. And a number of people have, I mean, I can understand his justification for this. Yes, as you said, Rotus, to crack down on illegal immigration and drug smuggling into the U.S. America currently has a huge drug problem, especially with fentanyl. And part of his measures to curb this is to impose these sanctions. But then you then ask what then happens to the US-Mexico-Canada agreement, which was signed under his administration. And this, provides almost a duty-free arrangement between America and its neighbors in the North American region. And so a number of people are asking that question and how this could potentially hurt not just the countries which these taxes will be imposed, especially Canada and Mexico, who are huge trade partners, and China, of course, huge trade partners with the U.S. and goods and services coming on both sides. Because, of course, I don't expect that, the countries would take this line low. I would expect a retaliation or a commensurate action from these countries. But it'll be interesting to see how the implementation of the USMCA, which he oversaw, would impact on this new directive or this new direction from Trump coming in, on his first day in office to impose these taxes.
Okay, let me start with global trade. President Trump was talking about global trade when he talked about that deal, U.S., Mexico, Canada, as it is now known. And he's saying he's going to impose tariffs on Mexico, which is the largest trading partner of the United States and which is responsible, in his own views, for immigration and importation of drugs into the United States. And then China. He had said that China will be slammed with a tariff imposition of 60%. Now he says there will be an additional 10%. And that will be one of the, the gale of executive orders that he will release on January 20. Well, China has responded, of course, to say, look, this is not true. But the thing to note is that what is going to happen will be a global trade war, because it's not as if China is going to fold its arms. What if China also engages in retaliatory tariffs? Now, Rawlings, who has been made Agriculture Secretary, the US-Mexico-Canada deal is going to be reviewed next year in 2025. And the big issue also will be about tariffs. We link that immediately to the fact that what you call the Besant bump, I think that's what you called it. And that bump, we have seen it in the stock market, we've seen it in the bond markets, because Scott Bessent is considered an insider. I mean, he's a hedge fund manager, so he's considered a safe pair of hands. The expectation is that he will be very moderate, and he himself has said, with regard to tariffs, he's going to leverage gradually. That's the word that he has used. That's what makes him, a big attraction, because they think, out of all the controversial persons, this will seem to be like a wrong person in the right person in the right place. Now, still talking about global trade. This morning, the WTO has received a formal protest from the EU Commission, and specifically from France, about China's tariffs on brandy tariffs from the EU. And France is the most hit because all these LVMH, all these French companies, they send a lot of brandy to China. And now China says it's imposing tariffs. So this global trade, international trade competition, WTO is the body to look into it. So it's not enough for Trump to say, I will issue executive orders. For China, it may represent risks and opportunities. Quickly, on oil. Oil is down on the average by about 2%. And that's as a result of the fact that the National Security Cabinet of Israel is meeting this morning to talk about ceasefire in the conflict with Hezbollah, the proxy Iranian agent. And Iran, is involved with the US and all that. But nothing is on the table yet, according to James Kirby. Until all of that is resolved, you don't have. But gold has gone down, also as a result of this geopolitics. Thank you.